What's up, everybody? So today got a little opportunity here to mess around with some microcontrollers. If you're unfamiliar with a microcontroller, it is essentially a little computer. Here's one here. It's called a Raspberry Pi. Oops, just hit the wall with that one. It's another one of my favorites. It's called a photon. Let's see if I can make that focus. But basically what this is like a little computer. It's like the computer inside your phone for the most part, except for the fact that we get to interact with it. We get to mess with the pins and do something creative. So one of the things that I have been working on for the past few years has been a controller for my Radon system. So what's the Radon system, you say? Great question. All right, so I'm outside here. This right here is a fan that is sucking air out of my basement. You can see here that it goes all the way up, and then outside up above the roof. This fan here creates a vacuum. Basically, what radon is a gas that comes from the ground. Depending on where you live, it is worse for some than it is for others. For us, it's pretty bad. It's like smoking a couple packs of cigarettes a day. But with the fan in place, what we do is we create a vacuum underneath the basement. I'm going into the basement right now. We create this vacuum, sucks the radon out, and then sends it on its way. So I'm getting down here in my storage room. As you can see here, for those who have basements, this is a sump pump. This giant pipe right there is the radon stack. Now it doesn't go down, it just goes down right underneath the lid, and you see the lid is sealed. And then it comes up and it's gonna shoot. Come on, focus, baby. Shoot way over there, and we'll come back over to that. So what you can see here, and I know the lighting's not the best, what you can see is we've created a bit of a vacuum there. If there was no vacuum, that blue line on the right, that liquid would have dropped. So we've created, I don't know, forget the measure, half a pound of pressure or something. So then we come over here. This is the other end of the stack. Here's where we're sucking from the basement floor. And then you can see right here is where that goes out to the fan. Problem that I have is that this fan in the winter, the stack is so warm that the air that it's vacuuming out is so warm that in the winter, when it's super cold, the stack freezes outside. And once it's frozen, the fan is useless. We can't create a vacuum, and then the radon builds up in the house. To get around this, I decided to use a little microcontroller and create what you see here. What this is you have a microcontroller. That's the Raspberry Pi. There's a circuit that I've built, and then a series of relays. And this here is running to the fan outside, and then to a de-icer. And then we have a number of sensors here. Here is a temperature sensor that is sitting inside of the stack. Oops, up there, temperature sensor in the stack. We have a pressure sensor. We have another temperature sensor that runs outside. So basically what I'm doing is taking a value of each one of those sensors, and then I'm making some decisions. So if the temperature gets too cold, what we're gonna do is we're gonna shut the fan off, and then we're going to turn the de-icer on. And that'll help warm up the stack outside. It'll help the water drain back down into the basement, and then therefore things don't freeze up. So the problem that I've had has been that the Raspberry Pi, while it's great, it's just a bit too much. It is an operating system on a chip. They all kind of are in some degree, but it needs to be updated. It's just not like running on bare metal, which is what I can do with the Photon. The Photon has both analog and digital, so I don't need an external ADC or an analog to digital converter. It has built-in Wi-Fi, so I can just connect up to the network. And more importantly, because of the built-in Wi-Fi, Particle has a cloud that I can publish to, so I can put functions and variables on the chip that I can interact with through an HTTP endpoint. I can hook an app up to it. Just a lot more feasibility, I guess, that I could do with it. Now, could I do all that stuff with the Raspberry Pi? Absolutely. It is just a computer. In fact, I could do more with the Raspberry Pi, but that's not the point. I need something that is purpose-built, simple, and fast. So today I decided that I would start the redo on this puppy. And so what I got now is I've got a new relay bank. I could have made one, but why when they're just so cheap? I've done some prototyping, so we'll get into that here in a bit. And I've changed the temperature sensor. So before, if you remember, the temperature sensor was like a big fat barrel. Problem is, when it gets super cold, that guy gets a little bit wonky, and it's a digital temperature sensor. Here, I'm pulling one out of a bag here. This here is actually what's called a thermistor, and it is basically just a resistor and a wire that has a known temperature or known degree of resistance at a certain temperature, and thus you can measure and figure out what the temperature is inside outside. It's more accurate, it's waterproof, it's a two wire simple setup, so I'm switching to that because for us it needs to work when the temperatures are super cold, right? So below freezing, sometimes here even below 0. That's Fahrenheit for everybody here in the US. So with that, I got a prototype going. I've got some code that's working. I need to start soldering this stuff up on a Perma proto board and plug it back in and see if it works. So that's what we're gonna do now. Ironically, or maybe not ironically, maybe it's just the state of things at the moment, my office is a complete disaster. So before I can even do any soldering, I have to get something set up that I can solder on. So I gotta go get a table. Alright, so I know it looks like I'm just kind of whipping right into this thing, and the reality is I've been working on this for a series of years. So not only is this something that's been rolling around in my head, but let's just say it's not the first time I've built it. It's more like the 5th. The basis of this whole project is going to start again around this relay bank. So what I need to do is I need to transfer a bit of this circuit to here, because I'm going to use these two in conjunction, and then I'm just going to take this guy and mount it to a piece of plexiglass, like you saw down in the basement, that I can just screw up in between the joists. Need to take the pins off of this, get them to this, connect some of the stuff on here. I know there's this little section right there that you could use to make some prototyping stuff, but none of them connect, so kind of more of a pain than it's really worth when I can just use one of these where the traces are all connected on the back. So
So here's what got built. Here's the relay banks. These relay banks here will actually plugs into 120, turns the fan and the de-icer on and off. There's the photon. Here's the set of the circuits. There's actually 2 LEDs, one here, one there. These are the thermistors coming out, and then we have a bit of circuitry around this pressure transducer. So this measures the volume on the temperature stack. You can see this relay right now is activated. Once the temperature goes down a little bit, it'll flip to the other side, and I can sit here and warm up. I could take one of these thermistors and warm it up, and that would change the temperature. And then it'll flip back and forth. So the scenario here is temperature drops, the de-icer turns on, fan stays running, then it turns off at some point too.
All in all, really happy with the progress that I made. I worked, when I built the Raspberry Pi version, I worked quite a while. Granted, some of it was exploratory, and here I just got to kind of replicate what I had done in some places before. So not all the problems on the Pi side, but really happy with the progress that I was able to make and how fast. I mean, most of the time was spent soldering, so we're talking, I don't know, a couple hours. There's probably, what do we got, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 30, maybe 50 solder points on this, so not too terribly big, but I have fat fingers, so that makes it hard. Found a few places where I needed to redo something or move something around just because I wasn't quite sure. One good tip, this relay board from Particle actually is already wired to D3, D4, D5, D6 on the photon. So I didn't realize that. I had actually wired it up and then found myself in some kind of, I'll call it digital write hell. Then just happened to realize that it was actually written on the board, fixed that, and everything worked as. I still have some code to finish up. It's actually working as designed. Based on the temperature, we do the flipping around. It's writing events to the cloud. I've only got about an hour in the code, so not really all that much. Next steps, I'm gonna mount this thing here to a piece of PVC, but I gotta run in a hardware store to get that. Once I do that, I'll actually get this thing mounted downstairs and on, and I'll keep refining the code. I got, I don't know, maybe an hour or so left. Super happy, super impressed. I'll put some of this stuff out on GitHub. Just a cool little project. Anybody could certainly do it. Not a lot here, not a lot of code. What do we got? 150 lines of code, so not even that much code. And you know, I think the photon's $20, the relay board's maybe 30. We got some LED thermistors, I think are $4 a piece, maybe 3. Some capacitors, LEDs, a couple of resistors. I don't know, 75 bucks maybe total. Pretty cool. Glad I got to share. Thank you for watching. Questions, please reply in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Little soldering tip here. If you've never soldered before, it's a high degree of fun. I like melting metals. A wet sponge is a great way to clean your tip.